Expanding your window of tolerance. My name is Carolyn Cowan. I'm a trauma therapist and I specialize in that very extraordinary emotion, shame. Your window of tolerance is set by how much you can bear yourself. It's set by what happened in terms of tall, dark histories, abuse, shame, and trauma. Your window of tolerance is also set by what you feel you deserve. And added into that is what you're doing to yourself. And I know that sounds awful to say, but we do things to ourselves. So this is one video that holds hands with another one, which is a little bit more interesting. Well, the window of tolerance is worth knowing about, but it holds hands with how much you hate how you feel. So let me start this video specifically about the window of tolerance. So I have kit. It's like being on Blue Peter. I have kit. I have a piece of paper. And this is a version of the window of tolerance. So if you can bear how you feel, if you find that you don't get that triggered, you're not unhappy, you're not anxious, you don't have any disorders, life is good, then your window of tolerance may be, a bit up here, maybe a bit down here, but essentially that could be a minute, especially if you've got a tall, dark history. That could be an hour, that could be a day, that could be a week, that could be a year. In your day, this could be, oh my God, Amazon came with that thing I wanted. If it was a year, it could be, that's a wedding. Something, a party. So a window of tolerance is bounded by, that's your highs here, and here might be your lows. Maybe you were unwell, maybe somebody around you was unhappy, maybe something happened. But most of the time, you'll move through your window of tolerance, being able to bear how you feel. I work with all the disorders basically, and one of the biggest ones actually is things like anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, things where addiction, self-harming, eating disorders, where the tolerance becomes, and once again you can view this through the lens of a minute, a week, an hour. So suddenly your emotions go outside the window of tolerance. So if you have got a tall, dark history, it can also be because you're facing something awful, but we're here talking about shame, and shame has very specific attributes and generally very specific causes. So in the course of a minute with a tall, dark history, you can fluctuate in emotional bandwidth so much. But the interesting thing when you look at this line, this is where you come out of the window of tolerance, either into being hyper, hyper aroused, or hypo-aroused. Hypo-aroused is being, depression would be a version of hypo-aroused. Hyper-aroused could be extremely angry. It could be really, really highly happy. And it's at this point here and here when your bandwidth for your tolerance of how you feel, when that is crossed, as in passed over, that you actually will hit what is metaphorically known in my world, in my own world, as the fuck it button. The fuck it button is a rather magical thing. It's that moment where you actively and actually play out, I don't deserve. Not Carolyn doesn't deserve. You do this to yourself, that you do not deserve anything better. You might as well take that line of Coke. You might as well smoke that joint. You might as well drink that wine. You might as well drink all that sugar. However you need to play out your inability to bear how you feel, that line is a representation of, at that point, that's where it's uncomfortably unbearable, which with a tall, dark history, my euphemism for trauma, it's normal. It's hideous and horrible and uncomfortable, but it's also normal. And it's also a get out of jail free card. You can always hit the fuck it button. So the window of tolerance is, we use that word a lot now, bandwidth. How is your bandwidth? You know, are you super stressed? Are you really overwhelmed? Are you profoundly unhappy? Are you really triggered? Are you extremely angry? Are you... the things that are most weaponized against you are to be the things that are most weaponized against you are to be offended, oppressed, and horrified. So the moment you hit those feelings, whether it's in the interpersonal or, you know, looking at social media, things like that, that is where you go outside your window of tolerance. And then the problem with being outside the window of tolerance and the fuck it button is you may not only just act out in your addictions. You may shout, you may get into a fight, you may get into a really serious OCD trigger. You might really weaponize your trauma and say things that you wish you hadn't said, not only to yourself, but perhaps to the other. So in the, in inverted commas, bigger picture, you want to expand and open more broadly your window of tolerance, which is an interesting concept, that you could actually open your window of tolerance. Now, if I come back to this drawing, you know, with self-care, with neuroplasticity, with doing stuff to regulate yourself, you could, over time, because it's not an instant fix, but you could make your window of tolerance much bigger. And then it means that you have much more agency over how you feel. Now, if you are using literally prescribed medication for mental health issues, one of the things that that actually does is it compresses the highs and the lows to be more bearable. So it compresses your sensation of highs and lows. I am not saying don't take medication. I am not saying that. I'm just explaining that it compresses the highs and the lows in many, many, many different ways, but it will help you make your mood more bearable. And if at some point you choose you want to titrate, which is a technical term for lessening your dose, then the art is to expand your window of tolerance. I teach breathwork and yoga. Actually, I taught a class this morning, and I do it actually because I love teaching, and I do it because it's a wonderful thing to do, and I do it because it's part of my job. I do it because it really, really changes how I feel. I show up, I stretch to open with everybody, do the breaths, and whatever was in my mind before I started is gone. Now I know this from practice. My mind also knows that the moment I start the stretch, everything will go quiet. And therefore, what happens over time, especially if you join into things like that, you expand your window of tolerance. If you open your social media app, whatever it is, first thing in the morning, it is literally, as is the news, literally designed to trigger you. The sound, the bright lights, the adverts that are really irritating, you know, how stupid do they think we are, all that kind of stuff. But also what you're watching is designed to enthrall your amygdala. I've talked about the amygdala before, and it's the amygdala that bounds, that creates the edges to your window of tolerance. If you're constantly triggering your window of tolerance, you cannot tolerate yourself. It's a very, very simple mathematical thing. So the more you can reduce your window, the more that you can open your window of tolerance, the more you can reduce where you hyper and hypo activate yourself, the better your day is. It's a very simple principle to work with. Understanding what you do to trigger yourself is important. Understanding where you put yourself in situations that take you outside of what is bearable is another way. And it's just a thing about understanding, okay, I'm outside of my window of tolerance. How do I take care of myself? There's the adult. Or how do I abandon myself, hit the fuck it button and just go, I can't do this anymore, with whatever your chosen form of acting out is. So the window of tolerance is a very important thing to pay attention to, and to see if you can find things a little bit more bearable before you act in or out. And one way to do that is to Say, okay, let's say you've decided to stop having sugar. I don't know if you know this, but sugar is probably the most addictive substance on the planet. It's very difficult to stay off sugar. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And sugar, you know, it's not really good for anything. I mean, I know it's everywhere, but it's not a great substance. And let's imagine you decide you want to stop sugar. Notice, what are the moments that you hit when you want sugar? What could you have instead? Sweeteners, they do the same thing to the brain and the liver, so they don't work as an option. Could you have a grated carrot? Could you eat an apple? Could you, because eating an apple is much better for you than drinking apple juice. Could you go for a walk? Could you, I don't know, do 20 push-ups? Just something to actively and positively change how you feel about where you find it unbearable. And what happens is that that peak over the window of tolerance, or that drop below, it comes down, your window opens. So pay attention to your window of tolerance. See if you can bear how you feel for a little bit longer each day. And it actually really, really in the long term, it does make a difference. If you notice that you really hate how you feel after, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours of looking at scrolling videos, they are designed to make you feel unbearable. They are designed, a lot of them, to trigger compare and despair. And compare and despair is a perfect, perfect shame trigger that will make you want to hit the fuck it button. So, beautiful person, be kind to yourself. There are 3 words that are not in our current use of language at the moment. Kindly, gently, and slowly. Notice, oh, I don't like how I feel. That's interesting. How can I help myself feel better to the positive? Make a decision for life and health.